Okay, so I'm going to be going over my Dinomorphia list including side deck. This is just this has been my deck of choice for a long time, since like the beginning of Snake Eyes format. It's got some bad matchups. As like to Ubel, that's still running around. And you have to be very careful about with managing your life points. Even though less life points equals good in this deck, you still need to be a bit careful, because certain your opponent can just drop a blowout card like a Zeus, and then you're just screwed if you don't have the Rex term or the negate Rex term. Unfortunately, this deck currently lives and dies by Rex term. I want to get more support so we don't have that issue, but until then, yeah, so let's just get into the list. So, up first, 3 copies of Dinomorphia Theresia. She is the bread and butter of the main deck. You need to max out on her. She sets a Dinomorphia trap from deck on normal summon. And then if you have 2,000 or less life points, she gains 500 attack. The attack point boost isn't super relevant, but it does pop up once in a while. The next up, I personally opt for 3 copies of Dinomorphia Diplos, but if you feel that you're breaking on him, you can drop him down to 2. I personally prefer to run the 3rd copy just so I have that extra name for fusion summoning purposes. When he's normal or special summoned, you can mill a Dinomorphia card, not even a trap, just a Dinomorphia card from your deck. And then if you're 2,000 or less life points, it burns your opponent for 500. In my opinion, the less life point effect is better than Theresia's. However, the 2,000 life point effect, the burn effect is better than Theresia's attack point gain. But Theresia is the better card. And then both Diplos and Theresia can banish a trap when they're destroyed by Power card effect to special summon out a level 4 or lower Dinomorphia. Up next, we run 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring, because Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring. Then we run 3 copies of Wannabe. Wannabe is an interesting card. So during the end phase, you can send her from your hand or field to the graveyard. And then you excavate the top cards of your deck equal to the number of open spell and trap card zones your opponent has. And then you take 1 trap from them and set it to your field. But during the end phase of the next turn, so if you do this during your end phase, because you can do it during your end phase or your opponent's end phase, during your opponent's end phase, you need to send the trap to the graveyard. It is a very good and underrated card. I'm pretty sure the only reason Labyrinth doesn't use this card is because the furniture is just better for them. Because genuinely, this feels like a card that Labyrinth would want, but it's just not good in Labyrinth. But it's great in Dinomorphia. Up next, we got the One of Misk. This card can come to 3 tomorrow and do basically nothing, but it is the best dinosaur support card. So we run it at 1. The graveyard effect of this card comes up a lot in the deck. Not as much as it would come up in, like, Dinosaur Pile, because you just banish this, summon the baby, pop the baby with Oviraptor. But discard this in response to your opponent trying to get rid of Rex term is so funny. Okay, and that's it for monsters. That's literally it. On to spells. We run 2 copies of Fossil Dig. Yeah, just 2 copies of Fossil Dig. If you want to run a 3rd, you can run a 3rd. Maybe take out the Diplos for that. But I personally prefer 3 Diplos, 2 Fossil Dig. And then I run the Super Polymerization Board Breaker build, although I'm not running a whole lot of targets for this card. But a funny play that I have done more than once is my opponent attempts to imperm Rex term. I chain a Super Poly and summon out a new Rex term. Or they try to target my Rex term to get rid of it, or like make it stop being an issue, and then I just fuse it with a Theresia or Diplos on board to make a new Rex term. It's hilarious. Okay. Up next, we have our trap cards. So, 3 Dinomorphia Frenzy. This is the best card in the deck. Like, this is the best main deck card. Threesia is the best, Threesia is up there, but this is your go-to card. This is the card your opponent will try to Ash Blossom. I have played the deck on, in person and in Master Duel. Your opponent will not Ash Blossom Domain. If they know you have a Frenzy set, they will hit the Frenzy. So this card, it lets you send a Dinomorphia monster from your extra deck. During your opponent's main phase, you can pay half your life points, to send a Dinomorphia monster from your deck and extra to the graveyard to fusion summon. It's really good. It is a 1-card Rex term. You just gotta wait for your opponent's turn, but it's a trap card, so that goes without saying. Up next, we have 3 copies of Dinomorphia Intact. I don't know why I jumped straight into the counter traps, but the counter traps are kind of just mixed in my list here. I probably should have prepared this better. Anyway, Dinomorphia Intact says that if you control a Dinomorphia card, you can negate a monster effect, and then for the rest of the turn, all battle damage you take becomes half your current life points. So, your opponent attempts to use Ash Blossom, you flip this, you stop the Ash on your, Frenzy, and now your opponent just wasted their Ash Blossom trying to prevent you from summoning Rex Term, but now your life points are even lower, and you still have the Rex Term. And then, like, all the Dinomorphia counter traps. If you have 2,000 or less life points, and your opponent declares an attack, you can banish it. And in doing so, you take no bad damage from that attack. I do not recommend using this effect the turn you activated Intact, because you can't die anyway. All battle damage is half for the rest of the turn. All battle damage is half for the rest, is half your life points for the rest of the turn. So them attacking is only making Kentrigina and Rex Term stronger by making them able to negate more. Next, we got the One of Brute. This is a Garnet. You want to mill this off Diplos. You can, when this card's activated, you pay half your life points to do so. Then you target 1 Dinomorphia monster you control and 1 card your opponent controls and destroy them both. As I stated, by banishing a trap, Diplos and Threesia float, so you can use this to destroy a problematic card in your opponent's field and your Diplos. Summon out Threesia, set a trap, gain the 500 attack points. As I said, sometimes it does pop up, and then you can attack for game with the Threesia you summoned. Then we got 2 Dinomorphia Alert. This is another card where if you only want to run 1 of it, that's fine. There's a genuine debate if you run 1 or 2. I personally prefer to run 2. Just because I like this card. 3's a bit bricky, but 2's great. You can have your life points to summon out as up to 2 Dinomorphia monsters from your graveyard whose total levels do not exceed 8. So you can summon out both Diplos and Threesia, or you can summon out one of the fusions, because none of the fusions, all the fusions, plus the Dinomorphia main deck monsters will exceed 8. The lowest level one we have is 6. Up next, we have 3 copies of Domain. This is Frenzy, but bad. Well, that's a bit disingenuous. This is Branded Fusion, but costs half your life points, and is a trap card. However, due to the way that Dinomorphia plays, this is good for them. But it's just Branded Fusion on a trap card. And I forgot to mention, all of the Dinomorphia normal spells, if your opponent would activate a card or effect, you can banish it to make it so you don't take any damage from that effect. You can do this even if your opponent doesn't activate an effect that would deal damage to you. Your opponent could activate Pot of Greed and you could respond by banishing Domain. It's stupid. You're never going to want to do that, but technically it's a legal play if you have a reason you need to banish Domain, and your opponent activates literally any card effect. you need to banish domain for the play to work. You can banish domain. I don't know why you'd want to banish domain for no reason, but if you have a reason for doing it, you can do it. And then the one of Sonic. This is the worst counter trap in the game. And this is the worst counter trap that is worth playing. If it didn't require you to destroy a Dinomorphia monster, I would absolutely max out on this card. But because it's only a spell and trap negate, and it requires you to destroy a Dinomorphia monster to do so, it's hit or miss if it's useful or not. Typically, you're going to be milling this off of Sonic, off of Diplos, just to get a counter trap engraved. But the counter trap, negating a spell trap isn't terrible. If you need to set it off Theresia, set it off Theresia. I've done it multiple times, but 9 times out of 10 when this card is being used, it's this graveyard effect I'm using, not its on-field effect. And then on to the generic traps. So I run 2 copies of Trap Tracks. Yes, I do run Trap Tracks over Trap Tricks. The reason being is that, as I said, all the Dinomorphia monsters float. So I gain more advantage by destroying my own Dinomorphia monsters than banishing a trap to use Trap Tricks. Overall, Trap Tracks is better because, pop Diplos, set Frenzy, banish the Trap Tracks to revive Theresia, set Alert, just as an example. Trap Tracks is better in this deck, in my personal opinion, than Trap Tricks because, well, as I said, you gain advantage from having your stuff destroyed. But also, you don't need to banish cards like, just as an example, you don't need to banish a Frenzy to set Frenzy. It still has the same conditions of your trap can be activated the turn you set it, but you're locked into 1 trap for the rest of the turn. So do keep that in mind. It is just Trap Tricks, but instead of banishing the trap, you destroy a monster you control. Up next, we got Triple Imperm. Because it's Imperm. Do I need to elaborate why my trap-based deck is running the best trap card in the game? Or at least, well, arguably the best trap card in the game. Up next, we got Solemn Judgment. 3 copies of it. Some people prefer Solemn Strike, and I don't understand why. Solemn Judgment, in my opinion, does more for the deck. It requires half your life points, so it's never offline. Because in Dinomorphia, you're getting down your life points to, I've gotten my life points down to single digits. But, Judgment is always online. And even though people think, say it's the original Omni Negate, it's not a total Omni Negate. It can negate monster effects. It can only negate effects that would special summon monsters. If a monsters would be summoned, or a spell or trap card is activated. So, it can negate polymerization in a synchro summon. But, if you wanted to negate a ritual summon, you would need to negate the ritual spell. You wouldn't be able to negate the summon itself. Just due to the way the Solemn Judgment is worded. But it can negate basically any special summon that you need, or actually I think it can negate normal summons too. I think technically this can negate normal summons. I don't actually know. I think it can, though. I'm pretty sure I've negated normal summons with this card. Overall, Solemn Judgment is a really good card in this deck. It helps out with the gameplay of less life points equals good, and it also just can... a well-timed Solemn Judgment can put your opponent back multiple turns. Up next... Ferret Flames. Yes, we are running Ferret Flames, because as I said, less life points equals good. Ferret Flames is a trap card that, you can only activate it if your opponent controls monsters whose total attack points is greater than your life points. As I said, I've gotten myself down to, single and double digits in this deck, so this card is almost always online. And you can set it off of the Trap Tracks, which is funny to just board clear your opponent. You just board cleared your opponent. But yeah. They will then choose monsters they control whose attack point... so this way, and shuffle those chosen monsters into the deck, and they keep choosing monsters until they the total attack points of monsters that they will control after the shuffle does not exceed your life points. Also, since this affects the player, it can get around cards like the Arrival Cybersat Ignister, Full Armor Master, that new, the new, Dragon, Ruler Exceeds, I can't remember what's called, the big one that gains unaffected. Basically anything you can think of that would be a problem to deal with, as long as it has attack points, this card can deal with it. This card can deal with basically any monster that has attack points. You just gotta find the right threshold. I think the only monster that has attack points I've ever struggled to get rid of with this card is Low. Yeah, the voiceless voice monster that has 50 attack points, which might as well just be 0. Okay, on to the extra deck. So I'm running 2 copies of Kentragina. I've messed around with the ratios a lot for the Dinomorphia monsters, and it really, how many copies of her you'd run, and also, Rex Term is based on the format. I cut both Rex Term and, Kentragina down to 2, because if I'm summoning out the 3rd, I'm probably losing that game. Also, there's just the fact that I needed space in the extra deck for other cards. So, Rex Term and Theresia were the ones that got cut. Up next, the worst Dinomorphia card in the deck, Dinomorphia Stealthbergia. And yes, we are running 3 of it. You are never summoning this card except for very, very niche circumstances. Because this card, when your opponent activates a monster effect, you can burn them for how much they have. But the problem with this card is that it prevents you from paying it. When your life points are 2,000 or lower, you don't pay life points for your cards anymore. Which sounds like a good thing, but when our whole game plan is centered around not having life points to make Rex Term and Kentragina, who I forgot to mention how she actually works. So she loses, 4,000 attack points on a very easy summon. That's a little insane. But she loses attack points equal to your life points, so she'll never be at 4,000. The strongest you can get her is 39.99. But that might as well just be 4K. And then she can pay half, and then during either player's main phase, you can pay half your life points and banish a Dinomorphia normal trap from your graveyard for cost. Do not let someone DD Crow your trap card you are trying to banish. She banishes for cost. And then you copy the effect of that trap card. So let's say you were only able to resolve one friend. You were only able to resolve Frenzy. So you activated Frenzy and Domain, but your opponent Ash Blossomed the Frenzy, so you only got out the Kentragina. You can just banish the Frenzy to summon out the Rex Term. Anyway, on to Stealthbergia. Back to Stealthbergia. This guy is bad. He prevents you from paying life points. We'll understand. I'll explain why that's bad when we get to Rex Term. But he also does a little bit of burn damage, which is not an insignificant amount of burn. He does have a place on the field. It's just that place is very niche. I have nicknamed this card Dinomorphia Frenzy Fodder, because that's why we run it. We run it to send it to the graveyard off of Dinomorphia Frenzy, so we don't have to send good cards to the graveyard, and I'm pretty sure that's why Konami made this card bad. I would not be surprised if Konami made this card bad on purpose, so this way we don't feel bad about sending it to the graveyard off of Frenzy. Now to the meat and potatoes of the deck. The 2 copies of Dinomorphia Rex Term. He's the bread and butter of the deck. You want him on turn 2, you want him to summon him during your opponent's turn immediately, depending on what your opponent's playing at least. I do not recommend summoning him immediately off of if your opponent's on Ryziel. Wait for the aggregator to hit the graveyard, because Aggravator is just an imperm. So anyway, he's got 2 effects. You can pay half your life points, and then the attack points of all monsters your opponent controls become equal to your life points. Since you pay the life points as cost, It will be whatever your life points are after paying the life points. So if you have 2,000 life points and use his effect, your opponent's monsters are now all at 1,000. And this is a quick effect. So you can use it during the damage step as a bad Dark Honest type card. On top of that, he's also Mystic Mine. Your opponent cannot activate the effects of monsters who have attack points greater than your life points. So, if you have, for example, 500 life points, monsters with 500 or more attack points just can't activate their effects. And this is part of the reason why I picked up Dinomorphia during Snake Eye format. It felt like a deck that people weren't prepared for, but actually matched up pretty well into the format. Snake Eye, I just had to get my life points to 2,000, and then my opponent's deck was turned off. That's where you... And Dinomorphia monsters all get stronger when you have... Dinomorphia cards get stronger when you have 2,000 attack point, or life points. For example, the counter traps, they can only prevent you from taking battle damage if you have 2,000 or less life points. The normal traps can stop battle effect damage whenever, but the counter traps can only do if you have 2,000 or less. Rex Term is, again, the bread and butter of the deck. He turns off your opponent's cards. If your opponent tries to beat over him, you can use his effect during damage step. So this way that not only do they fail to kill him, they also made themselves take more damage than they needed to. Just watch out for U-Bell players. This deck dies to U-Bell, and I will go over that more when we get to the side deck. Because, as I said, I am going to be showing off my side deck. Up next, I'm going to be going over these two at the same time. Garura and Dracostapelia. This is a negate. This is a draw one. They're both super polymerization targets. I don't think I need to go over, or I should say when this thing dies, it's a draw one. Also, it's, even though it's weak on the attack point stat, it deals double damage. So if you can beat over something, it does a not insignificant amount of damage. Also, its defense points are pretty decent. But combining the Garura with the Rex Term, he can deal some serious damage, because you can just, like, oh yeah, your attack points are now 5. Oh, by the way, I deal double damage, so you take around 3,000. This is, like, actually scary. And that's why I chose for Garura Wings of Resonant Life over Mudragon of the Swamp. Also, I feel Garura is just slightly better this format than Mudragon. I could be wrong on that, but there's not really anything good super polymerization-wise. But Garura counters, I believe it does. So check. Yeah, Garura is an answer into Malice. So that's... because same type of attribute but different names. They're all Dark Cybers. Garura, no, not Garura. Lagi and Doka. Monster negate. Solemn Judgment on legs. They're just generic Dino support cards, even though they're dragons. That's kind of how the Evolve archetype works. These cards are just good. See, look. This is just Solemn Judgment on an Xyz monster, and this is just Imperm on, I guess, technically Effect Veiler. Or, actually, probably closer to Solemn Strike. I'm not really sure. All I know is that these cards are good. I tend to go into Lagia more than Doka, just because Doka doesn't do a whole lot when Rex Term prevents monster effects, but it's still a good idea to run both. Abyss Dweller, it's a rank 4 that tells your opponent they can't use the graveyard. What more do you want from me? That's all there is to it. It's a good Xyz monster. It has been a good Xyz monster since basically it came out. Double A Zeus, you just... let's say your Lagia uses it to negate. Summon this on top of it. Swing it on your opponent's monsters. Take it as an Xyz material. Detach 2. Board clear. It's Zeus. There's not much else to it. Or if you went into Dolka because you were struggling to get into a Rex term, and now you don't need it in the game anymore because you got out the Rex term. Just be mindful that Zeus does clear your own stuff. And then SP Little Knight and IP Masquerena. IP Masquerena go to link into to use to make SP during your opponent's turn. There are times where you will have to use Kentragina to make SP. It is worth it. SP is just that good. And now onto the side deck. So, for my side deck, I'm running 3 Drone Lockbirds to prevent my opponent from searching a numerous number of times with something like Ryziel, because Ryziel searches a lot. And this prevents that. Up next is my 3 copies of Ghost Mourner. I'm side decking this because it's just basically another 3 copies of Imperm. So if whatever deck I'm going up against, I need more Imperms, I side these in. And then we run the 2 copies of Fenrir. I do want a third, but I just don't own a third copy of Fenrir. I only own these 2. This is if I know I'm going to be going second, because I'm going to say this right now. If your opponent ever wins the coin flip, they will say go first. I've had Tenpai players say go first against me. Tell me I'm going second. Tenpai players. So if I know I'm going to be on the draw, I side these in because the deck doesn't do a whole lot going second. If you siding in the cash tier of Fenrir's at least gives me some going second plays. Not many, but you know, I can side in. I can drop the Fenrir, summon Theresia, set my cards, and then even have the Fenrir search the other Fenrir in case my opponent clears my board. I can drop down the other Fenrir. Also, just Fenrir is a good card. I just don't main deck it because it's only here for on the draw. If you want to main deck it, and I couldn't tell you what to remove, honestly, because I side them in case-by-case matchups. Again, that's why I side them and not main them. But if there's a certain card that you think the Fenrir is better in the main deck and that card's in the side deck, go ahead, switch them out. Up next, I side deck a copy of Loving Defender Forever. As I said, I'd explain when I get to the side deck. This deck dies to Yubel. Like the second Yubel shows her face, this deck basically keels over. Yubel isn't running around enough that I want to main deck this. I used to main deck this card. This card used to be in my extra deck, and now it's in my side deck. Basically, if you out the Phantom of Yubel, or not Phantom, yeah, Phantom of Yubel, you can then use Super Polymerization to just fuse away their entire board into this. And now, because Yubel doesn't really run Loving Defender Forever anymore, they had to find out how to deal with their own card. And then on top of that, you can still just make Dinomorphia plays. This card is annoying. Basically, this card gives you this card doesn't even win the duel. This card gives you a fighting chance to see game 3. Up next, we got 3 copies of Evenly Matched, because evenly matched. And then I'm going to go over these 3 at the same time. Anti-Spell, Rivalry, goes in. Floodgate, Floodgate, Floodgate. We are playing a control deck. People call this deck a stun deck, but it is a control deck. It is a heavy, heavy control deck. It just feels like a stun deck because the deck is incomplete. You side in these Floodgates based off the matchup you're in. Unfortunately, Malice doesn't care about any of these. They use trap cards like us. They're all dark monsters. I'm sorry, they're all Cybers monsters. They're all dark monsters. So Malice doesn't, like, Malice may have a couple of cards. I don't know exactly what they're running that, like, these cards will affect. I'm sure they have some spell, like, they run Sign at Backdoor. So, like, the anti-spell might come up, but I'm pretty sure they only use Dark Cyberse monsters. So these cards don't pop up much, but I've never actually gone up against Malice, so I don't know enough. I've only gone up against Ryziel, and I know that these kind of affect Ryziel. They're not great, don't get me wrong, against Ryziel. Ryziel can play around these, but at least they slow them down. And that's the name of the game for this deck. Slow down the game. We're not trying to stop it, we're trying to slow it down. Now, I would go into, you know, some combos here, but it's Dinomorphia. Your combo is Summon Theresia, set 4 pass. That is considered to be the go-to play. Summon Theresia, set Theresia, set 4 pass. Or, you know, if you're not setting Frenzy because you have it in hand. So basically, this is my checklist. Do I have Frenzy in hand? If I do, I'm not setting Frenzy. If I don't, I'm setting Frenzy. So, if I have Frenzy, I move on to the next piece of my checklist. Do I have Domain in hand? If the answer is no, I'm setting Domain. And if I have both in hand, then I set Intact. And if I have all 3 of those in hand, because I just am a god and open up the best possible hand, I am setting Alert. Even if I have Alert in hand, I'm setting Alert. Unless, like, it's a very hyper-specific matchup and I need a very hyper-specific card. My priority bracket is Frenzy, Domain, Intact, Alert. Just to give you an idea of how I personally play the deck. I can't really think of anything else to say. It's just Dinomorphia. There's not a whole lot to it. It's just flip over the traps, slow down your opponent's game plan. There's not a whole lot to it. But it's a fun deck. Like, I have fun playing it. I don't think people at my locals have fun going up against me. I've had Snake Eye players sit across from me, realize that they're going against me, and just surrender. That's actually funny. That, like, I got top cut. Well, not top cut, but I got a top at a locals just because, like, 2 people just saw it was me and basically just went up to the guy, the judge, and was like, I'm taking the L. I'm not fighting Dinomorphia. So that's all I had to say for this deck. I might do more deck profiles. I got, some other decks. Like, I have a Dragon Maid deck. I don't have a ton of decks. I have a Dragon Maid deck. I have a Subterror deck, but I think I need to update that list due to ban lists. I have a branded list, but that also needs major updates because the last time I touched that list was before Branded Fusion was limited. In fact, Branded Fusion limited, the limited of Branded Fusion is what made me fully commit to switching over to Dinomorphia, not just keeping it as like a deck that I play once in a while. Branded Fusion is limited is what I'm switching over to Dinomorphia. So that's really all I have to say about this. Let me know in the comments if you want to see more deck profiles, because I am more than happy to oblige.